seated. Welcome, everyone. I am Bishop Sutton, and I will be conducting today's services as we celebrate the life of Neil Bergstrom. We're grateful for all the family and friends who could be here for this today. We will open now. We did just have a family prayer by Jason Bergstrom that was previously offered before the casket was closed. And now we will open our funeral services with by singing hymn number 252, Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel. We're grateful for Marjan Over who provided the music for that. And McKenna Terry, I believe, will be our chorister today. Is that right? Okay. I don't know if you do that. We will sing 252, Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel, after which Sabrina Bowden will give our opening prayer.
Our dear Heavenly Father, if we be here together today and to celebrate Grandpa, just the impact that he had on our lives, and please bless us and comfort us at this time that we may feel your love and know that Grandpa's up there in a good place, and please bless that we'll still be able to feel his love with us and say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
you very much. It was so neat to look at this program and see how many people are participating today. And so I think we're going to enjoy this. I'm grateful for everyone who is participating. We'll now have a eulogy provided by Brenda Bergstrom, after which a life sketch given by Walter Bergstrom. We'll have Austin Bergstrom come up and give some memories of his grandfather. And then a musical number by Monica and Zane Bergstrom. Families can be together forever. Another grandchild will offer memories of Grandpa. That'll be Tyler Bergstrom. The speaker will give us a message. Chris Bergstrom will provide a message for us. And then another musical number by the grandchildren, I Am a Child of God. Kayla Bergstrom will come up and provide additional memories of her grandfather, and J.C. Bergstrom will do the same. We'll go to that point.
Neil Lamont Bergstrom was a loved father, son, and brother during his 78 years of life. He left us on Sunday, April 10th, 2022. Neil was born in Turner Valley, Alberta, Canada on October 12th, 1943, to Bernice and Willis Bergstrom. Neil was known for his wit and love for his family. He was also known around town for his willingness to help fix a car, coach a team, umpire a game, move a family, and more. He spent afternoons and weekends at the ballpark and evenings at the racetrack. He was an automotive expert for most of his life, and recently a friend and bus paraprofessional for Academy School District 20 on a special needs bus, which he loved. Neil is survived by his 4 children: Lisa Terry of Lompoc, California, Chris Bergstrom of Mona, Utah, Chuck Bergstrom and wife Brenda of Lehigh, Utah, and Jason Bergstrom and wife Monica of Salem, Utah. He leaves behind 16 grandchildren. He is also survived by his brother Walter Bergstrom and wife Laura of Littleton, Colorado, and ex-wife Vicki Pesci of Pleasant Grove, Utah. Neil also leaves behind many other family members and friends. I just have a quick story about Neil. He most recently worked as a bus paraprofessional. He once told me that he looked for that job because of his grandson, Brendan. He loved that job. He told me so many fun stories about the kids on the bus and the special connections. He sometimes gets phone calls from some of the kids on the bus just because, one of them, they had a little thing where he turned around and they go like this back and forth to each other even though she couldn't speak. He loved their smiles and their fun and sometimes feisty or stubborn personalities. And he loved being called Mr. Neil. So the reason I'm bringing up this story is that the drivers and the pairs weren't supposed to give the kids food or stuff, but Neil liked to break that rule. He would hand out Oreo cookies to the kids when they got off the bus. He became well known for this fun tradition, and one that his bus driver is going to continue in his honor. When we got into his truck, sure enough, there was 2 boxes of Oreo cookies that he had ready to pass out. A gesture that we want to pass along to everyone today. So on your way up, please grab some Oreos to take with you and remember Neil.
Oh, I'm not used to this fancy stuff. We'll work on it. Anyway, Brenda, that's a lot of news. I never knew those things about Neil, all that stuff you were talking about. I know he loved the bus. He really did love that bus job. He loved those kids. And but I never knew all those things. He never shared that with us at all. So mine is kind of a rehearsal or a repeat of what you said, basically, what I had written down. But I didn't have a form to do it on, so I didn't have to paper pen the old way. I had to write it several times to get it done. It took me several hours to get this little bit written up. So you guys, it's going to be just perfect. Not quite, almost. Anyway, I was gonna start out with Neil, his birthday and all that, everybody knows that already. So I'll just go with and of course, his 3 sisters are passed away, but I'm still alive, so there's one of us left. Anyway, so I thought he lived in Turner Valley. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I was wondering. I wasn't sure because I didn't write it down because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it was Mirror, maybe it was Red Deer. I wasn't for sure about those. But anyway, when I'm going to start my story is that we lived in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada as a family. And the dad was a truck driver or something like that. But he ended up he was a citizen of the States. They said during that war, if he wanted his citizenship, he had to join the military. So then he joined the military, and then we moved into the States. But anyway, where I started out was, as far as back as I remember about anything unusual happening with Neil, it was that him and I were in the basement of our home, and we were playing, of course, and we were about 2, 3, 4 years old at that time, and we found a baby crib. And this is really the only thing I can remember of our early life as far as back as I could go. We found a baby crib that was made of metal. It had steel rails, stuff like that on it. So we thought, well, this is going to be a neat thing to make a ladder. We're going to climb on this ladder. And we did. And like I said, you could see trouble ahead and an accident looking for a place to happen, and it did. The ladder is meant to be climbed on, and it was. The ladder was leaning against a bench or maybe a table, something tall, so you have an angle to climb on. And it slipped with Neil on it. Now, he was only about maybe 3, possibly, I don't know, but not for sure. And it slipped anyway, and he fell on this thing, and it cracked. This is what I like about the story. It cracked the back of his head, right in here. And in those days, we didn't go to the doctor every time something happened. Mom dumped a little iodine on it, or a Band-Aid. That was it. It's all the fixing was done. Anyways, Mom fixed it, and where was that? Yeah. Anyway, it slipped, and Mom fixed his head, and it left about a 3-inch scar on the back of his head, maybe about maybe a quarter of an inch split, and to stop the bleeding and everything else. He wore that scar the rest of his life. It never did cover up. It was always there. So I had a story to tell about that. I said, I enjoyed telling about the mistake God almost made by putting his mouth on the back of his head. That's why that scar was there. I'm not sure Neil appreciated the story, but it was sure convincing that might have happened. So those kind of mistakes just never go away. And that was the most unusual thing happened in our family for all those years until we got into be a little older. And so anyway, so in Neil's teen years, he was able to play organized baseball. Now we all know he likes baseball. So he liked to play organized baseball. He was a pretty good pitcher. And when he lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming, his team went to play to the playoffs in Casper, Wyoming. And I don't remember how well they did, but it was a good time, and they made it at least to the playoffs. And we were happy and proud of Neil's accomplishments because he just really loved baseball. And Neil grew up as a responsible person. He worked hard, played hard, striving to do better. If you needed some help, he was willing to do what he could, even into later life. He was just that way. He was, as you said, he's willing to help anytime he can. Yeah. Anyway, he was a giving and caring person. He surprised me when he coached Little League Baseball. And I think that was Toronto, California. Yeah. But remember, he did have some experience at a young age with baseball. He knew a little about baseball. As determined as he was to do the best, he could be very demanding. If he wanted it a certain way, if you crossed him up, he got a little bit irritated with that. Anyway, so he was coaching, and Neil impressed me with how well he dealt with the younger people. Coaching can be tough and draining. I could imagine. First, you must win no matter what. And then you must play every player, which is only fair, only right. The parents sit there watching, got to see their kid play baseball, so all the kids got to play ball. And he must, of course, please the parents for sure. And I watched on TV some parent problems that they get pretty rowdy and crazy because the coach did something wrong or didn't put his kid on base or something like that. I had that experience myself. My oldest boy, he was practicing baseball all the time, and the coach never let him play. I mean, he was there every practice. So I went to the coach and said, what's going on here? So I was even getting that way about that. So he had to play him. Anyway, so and Neil had some tough times, but he kept with it because he had those problems as well with the parents. And now Neil has received some signed baseballs, and I understand they were from the players he coached. So that was giving him praise as a great coach. He must have done some real good, and we're proud of him. I never knew that fact. I didn't know he had those signed baseballs. At least I was told he had them. I saw some, and that they said he was a good coach. So he must have been working well with the kids. And Neil has a heart for young people, and he seems to understand their needs. Since retirement, he has been working on a special needs bus. He has been working on a special needs bus. Sometimes can be a little rough, but he has a real concern for these kids, and he does. I asked him how he did it because I don't think I could do it. And as I was very surprised and impressed because he can be so difficult at times, but yet he's so soft after he just mellows out. And so Monday on the 4th, he responded to me, he cares about them. So Monday, the 4th of April, he was supposed to go to his doctor, but he chose work instead. He went to care for his kids on the bus, and he ended up in the hospital. Under that hard-appearing surface is a soft marshmallow heart. He wanted to help and care for others. Neil impressed on me how he has dealt with different situations. He keeps on coming back with help and care. He certainly was a good man who made some bad choices. He still cared for him. We still cared for him and loved. Through it all, God still cares. As in Romans 5:8, God shows his love for us in that while we are still sinners, Christ died for us. Neil will certainly miss you. Neil, we will certainly miss you in our special Saturday at 1 p.m. lunch. That's what we've been doing now for, I guess 5 years anyway. We go every Saturday to lunch, unless he comes out to visit you guys out in Utah, they don't have lunch with him. But we had lunch every Saturday. So now Lauren and I are saying, God, we're going to have to go and just have lunch just in memory of Neil. So in Castle Rock, that's where we go. So we'll have to do that too. But anyway, I said, I wrote down here, I said, you are loved, Neil. And 1 John 1 said, but if we walk in the Spirit, if you walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. So my little prayer to him was, I said, thank you, Lord, for the blessing of having Neil among us. And thank you for God's grace that we might be saved. Thank you for Jesus' shed blood that can cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And amen to that. So Neil was a good man, and he did some dumb things, and he was sorry for it, and he lived through it. He was on him all his life, but he still managed to do well, and we still loved him anyway. My notes.
It was hard to pick the memories that best encapsulate my time with Grandpa. So I hope these ones do a good job of that. My first is when he and I were driving down to southern Utah for a baseball tournament. The car radio lost signal, and this was before Spotify and all that, so all we had to pass the time was conversation. This is when I learned the unique way Grandpa communicated. He was a notorious mumbler and losing his hearing, which is a delightful combination. One tip I learned from that trip is that if you don't understand him after 3 attempts, smile, nod, and say some variation of "yeah, for sure," or something like that. The other tip is to say everything twice, but just louder the second time. We got to the tournament just fine, and we both came away from it closer and full of fun conversations. Another memory I have of Grandpa that makes me smile is when we visited my dad's cousins in Bakersfield. I love that trip and all the people we met. One of the people we met was Aunt Beth, who had a smoking habit at the time. When we were all hanging out, Grandpa noticed she had one last cigarette in her carton and decided to play a joke on her, and he took it when she looked away. When she started looking for it, he held it behind his back. And I saw him do that, and so in true Grandpa fashion, he gave it to me to get the heat off of him. Thankfully, Aunt Bev saw it all, and I didn't get in any trouble, and laughed about it, so it's good. The last memory is when my grandpa helped me change out the engine in my crappy Explorer this last summer. Grandpa was always so helpful with his mechanical expertise. He helped us change tons of brakes, radiators, and could solve seemingly any car issue. On the Explorer, I had a blown head gasket, and Grandpa was more than happy to lend a hand changing out the engine. It was a long, complicated, and frustrating experience. I'd use all the communication tips in my tool belt, and there's a lot of patience practice by both of us. We never did figure out why it wouldn't turn over, but I would have much rather not be able to figure it out with Grandpa than solve it by myself.
I just had my main memory that I wanted to share was when Grandpa helped me and my brothers and my dad restore a 1966 Ford pickup that I drove in high school, and it was a beautiful truck, two-tone, orange and white, and it ran like a dream. The memories we made together working on that truck will always be with me. Grandpa was stubborn. I remember when he was helping me put the engine back in, my dad had told me not to let him actually do any of the work, but I knew there was nothing I could say to him to keep him from getting hands-on and pulling himself across the garage floor to get a good look from underneath. Me and my grandpa spent the majority of the weekend trying to get it in. It took forever, but we finally managed to get it done. I know all of us here have had our car troubles and our projects, and Grandpa was always there to answer any questions or teach you a thing or two. I learned a couple things that night when we got the engine back in. The first one was hard work, dedication, and stubbornness can get you wherever you want to go. The other was when you're putting an engine back in, the more you swear at it, the easier it'll go in. Sometimes if you called Grandpa and asked him a car question, he didn't immediately have an answer. Sometimes he would call you back a week later and say, he would say, hey, I've been thinking a lot about that. And you'd have some sort of explanation, but I know when you would call, what you really meant was, hey, I've been thinking about you. Grandpa showed his love through the small things. Whether it was helping you with your car, taking you to Starbucks, or even just watching a movie with you. He showed his love by spending time with you and helping you when you needed it. It's hard to know that the next time my car breaks down, the next time I have a question about a project, he won't be there to answer the phone. But I know that with his example and with what he taught me about hard work, I can be stubborn, get up under the hood and figure it out. Grandpa was proud of his family and loved everyone very much. I love you, Grandpa.
Good morning. So, growing up with my dad was probably perfect in my eyes looking back on it. I know a lot of people didn't know him like we did. When we grew up going to Saugus Speedway, any weekend he could get off, Santa Maria Speedway, these are things that made him happy. A fresh cut lawn, a newly washed car, overcooked hamburgers. At least I thought they were overcooked. My mom loved them. Dodger games on TVs on Saturday afternoons. Picnics at the Holy Falls. Loud fast cars. Evenings watching Murder, She Wrote and MASH. Deep sea fishing from out of Gaviota with his boss. And a very colorful vocabulary in stop and go traffic. But we loved him dearly, and I just have a few memories of when I was young, like stuff that just really stood out most of my life. Most of you guys know he was a technician. That's what you call him in the car business. It's not a mechanic, okay? It's a technician. And growing up, he was my hero. He was my buddy. He was the man I most admired in my life. Some of my earliest memories were going down to to Lompoc Ford and, get out of the car, my mom would drop something off and we'd jump out and he'd walk us around and like the lady at the desk and the other mechanics just all treated us like we were royalty because we were Neil's son. And it was like that everywhere he went. Growing up, people knew him, and when they knew him, most of the time they thought he was the greatest thing. I mean, you get to know everyone, talk to anyone, which was a pretty good life lesson for me. And then he worked at a brake and tire front end place, Pacific Brake and Tire, and we would go there on Saturdays when we were lucky. He'd use his creeper as a skateboard, and race around, and then he'd give us a couple bucks, and we'd walk down to the gas station and grab a soda or whatever we wanted, and walk back, and that was kind of our treat, hanging out with Dad. And he was one of those guys that he would do anything, he could do anything on a car, but good luck learning from him, because it was like, did you see that? And we're just like, yeah, okay, he was not very patient when it came to teaching us things, but he could do just about anything. He used to collect ball bearings for me, just out of big, huge wheel bearings that were the size of marbles. And when I was little, I just got a kick out of them because they were just so shiny and, looked just like marbles. And he'd usually, when I come and show up, he'd have 2 or 3 just sitting in his toolbox, waiting for me to get to me. Just little things that made me feel special. He was always working on somebody's car on Saturdays. Wasn't the most popular thing between my mom and him, but he was helping someone from church or somebody from work, or he would trade work for our sports equipment with a guy that owned a sporting goods store in our town. He would do some work on his car, and we'd have the best bats and gloves and cleats that we needed. He was always willing to do whatever it took to get us what we needed to be happy, and his hard work is what got us that. I remember one of my youngest memories, besides his scruffy face every day when he came home from work, was when we go for a ride in these big, usually not the most impressive cars that he'd bring home, but usually like a big international truck or something. I always look over at him and he'd have his hand like this up on the window would be down, and he's just sitting there with the radio going, driving with one hand, and had his elbow on the window sill and his finger up in the track, and I just remember as a kid trying to do the same thing. It's one of my earliest memories. And I would stick my arm on there and it was like this big. And so I'm like 6, 8 inches short from hitting the top of the thing, and I'd look at him and I'd see he could do it. So I'd scoot forward on the seat until I get to the very corner of the window and I could sit like this, and then I was being like my dad, That's kind of how I try to live my life. He was always such a good example and such a great man. Tough as nails, but like Walt said, he was just a cream puff inside. And a lot of people saw the tough as nails side, a lot of them saw the cream puff side, but when you got to know him, that cream puff side always came out. Saturday mornings, he'd take us to the donut shop, and we'd get a cup of coffee or hot chocolate, and we'd go in, and I don't know why, I'm sure Joe Biden isn't excited about it, but the guy always left his car running. Like it was, he's running, keys are in it, it's running. I mean, this is Lompoc, California, but still. I never understood that. Maybe it was because he's afraid that he wouldn't get it restarted. That could have been it, because again, they weren't brand new cars we were driving around in, but he always left his car running. But we go into the donut shop, people always knew him. They thought he was great, and they talked to us like we were special, and that's kind of the way that we lived our lives. But everybody knew him in our hometown, and everywhere we went, it seemed like people knew that you were Neil's boy. It even got me out of a few tickets for like loud music or loud exhaust on my car. I got pulled over and they'd look at my driver's license and they'd give me this look and they'd let me go, because they knew that I was his son. Maybe they just needed some brakes done. I don't know. Could have been either or, but whatever. I got out of the ticket. But my best memory as a boy was when I was super little. I still remember vividly getting up in the morning when I hear the front door shut, or the engine of his, jalopy starting out there or whatever. And for whatever reason, I'd wake up, I'd run to the front living room window, and I just still remember pushing the curtains out of the way. I was probably as high as the windowsill. And I'd look out the window, and before he took off every day, he would look towards the window. He would see if I was sitting there, and if I was, I'd give him a big thumbs up. And he'd give it back to me, and then he'd take off to work. And then I'd go back to bed, and that was kind of something that he and I had for years and years. And it actually, I told that story to my oldest daughter, Haley, and I had her in summers and weekends and stuff. And I still remember her poking her head out the window of our 2-story house and, saying goodbye to me. I don't know if she gave me a thumbs up, but regardless, she poked her head out there and waved, and it was basically because I had told her that story about my dad, and she carried that tradition on, which made me feel pretty special. So I'm sure that my dad felt the same way. He taught me to play ball, he taught me to drive a car, how to work, how to play hard, and how to be selfless. But teaching me how to be a dad was the most priceless thing that he gave me. He taught us all to do the job better than the next guy. And he taught me that life was about relationships. It wasn't just about money. It was about doing people favors and helping them out. And, not necessarily just to make them like you, but just because that's the right thing to do. And that kind of was the way that I'm a service advisor, so I went against his counsel. I went in the car business like him. My 2 younger brothers were much smarter than I was, and they used all those skills in different areas of life and became a lot more successful than I did. But, he always taught us to do the job better than the next guy. Sweep the floor. It doesn't matter what it is, you do it better than the next guy. And that's the way that I worked. And I never made a ton of money, but I was always the best wherever I went. And I worked at the biggest Ford dealer in the world for 6 years, and I was the top service advisor in half the country. And it wasn't, I'm not saying that to brag, but it was because of the things that he taught me and the example he showed me, and my brothers did the same thing. They've been successful in everything they do, especially being a father. These boys are the greatest fathers that I know. They would do almost anything for their children and for me or anyone else, and I love them. And they remind me of their dad, so much that it's hard not to appreciate their success. But the best part of him as a dad was a kind of a secret that I always kept because I didn't want anybody to know about it, and I didn't even like talking about it out loud. But my dad raised me from the time I was like 1, me and my sister, probably earlier, and eventually he adopted me, but he wasn't my biological father. But I never thought of him that way. I didn't even know about it until later on when I was a kid. I didn't even think about it. When somebody even now would say something, I look at them like they're crazy. Like, what do you mean? I only have one dad. I would be like confused for a second because he was my dad, and that was a choice he made. He made that choice and he stuck with it. And no matter what mistakes I made as a hormonal teenager, no matter all the same sort of stuff that Walt was talking about, my dad did, I probably did the same thing. He stuck with me and he loved me. And it wasn't uncommon for me just to miss a call from him and get a voicemail saying how much he loved me and my children, and tell him to give a hug. Grandpa says give the girls a hug, and that he's proud of me and they love me. And I had a bunch of messages on my phone that after he passed I went and saved because he was good at that. He evolved as a man. I know how he was when I was young, and I see how he is as a grandfather, and it inspires me to try to be a better father, a better person. And you're not just stuck with what you're given. You can always try to be better. And he did that. Like he showed love and affection to my daughters and to us as he got older that we never saw when we were little. He was just tough as nails guy, but as he got older, he evolved and he grew and he got better. And that's why he was such a good worker. That's why he's such a good dad, a good person, is that he always tried to get better and never settled for the way he was. And that's the biggest thing to me is that he made a choice and he stuck with it. For me and my sister, he raised us. He was my dad. If anybody said different, then I would probably have a big problem because I was proud to be a Bergstrom. I was proud to be his son, and I still am. And when I had heard that he passed, I went into my girls and I told them that he's going to live through us. He's going to live through my daughters, through their kids. He's going to live through the choices we make over the next few years and the rest of our lives. And the things that he's done and the people he's touched and affected, just always trying to be better is something that we can do. And that's a pretty motivating thing for me. I always try to do things a little bit better than I could have. But the last thing I want to talk about is, real quickly, is we went to his house and his backyard wasn't great. It was pretty tore up with weeds and stuff, and we were all going through his things, which is not something I ever would recommend to anyone. It's hard. I mean, you have to, but it's just one of those things where you're going through your father's things, the gifts that you've given him over the years, and his house. And his backyard was a mess. And we were only there for 2 days, and everybody was focused on the inside of the house, but I just couldn't sit in there anymore. I had to get out. And the one thing I did with my dad growing up was yard work. I mean, we always did yard work, and he was a perfectionist. I mean, everything he had to do was perfect. It just had to be perfect. And so I went in that backyard and found the tools I needed, and I knocked down the stuff back there, and it was snowing, and my mom was yelling at me to get in the house. And I didn't care because I knew it was probably a lot more work inside maybe than it was just the physical stuff. I can always do the physical stuff. So I stayed out there and I made sure that like halfway through it, I could have took shortcuts and I didn't. I didn't want to take shortcuts. I wanted to make him proud of me one last time when I came to do in that yard. And that's the way he did things. That's the way he lived his life. And it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And I didn't want to let him down. And that's the way he made you feel, like he led by example. He always taught us boys things, and he wasn't always, we didn't always see eye to eye, but most of the time he was right in what he was trying to teach us. So I love him and I appreciate him, and he's still here with us, and I know that I'll see him again. And I appreciate my family, even more so now that he's gone, because I see him in all of my brother's kids. I see him in my kids. Obviously I see him in Walt. Walt looks a lot younger than my dad did, but he's still a handsome guy. I'll let you say it like that. But anyways, that's my dad. I couldn't be more proud. I know my brothers feel the same way. They couldn't be more proud to have him as a dad. He's a loving person, and he was always trying to be a better man. And I think we can all learn something from that. So. me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find the way. Teach me all that I must do to live with wisdom.
Hi, I was gonna say good morning, but I feel like that has double meaning in this situation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Livestream-Neil Bergstrom. I am the daughter of Neil and Vicky's son, Chuck. I stand before you today, as stated in the program, to share a memory. The other day, my dad and I were talking about, like, my dad was like, what are you gonna say? And do you know what, like, are you prepared? And I was like, I might just wing it. And I don't really know. I mean, how can you sum up an entire person's life into just like a short talk? There's really no way to do it. And I'm not here to even attempt to do that. All I can do is share only a small amount of times and moments that I remember and I was able to share with him, that hopefully give us a small look, a little sliver of the life of my grandpa and the things to remember about him. So I'm here to share like grandchild memory or memories, right? But memory is weird, isn't it? The things you remember and the things you don't really get to choose all the time. I think the cruelest part of memory are the moments we forget he's gone. That moment when you wake up in the morning and have a second where you forget. And right before it all comes flooding back. However, there are good parts of memory, like when I get to remember the good times. I remember how most summers I would visit my grandpa, usually with my grandma. We would go to the rec center and they would let me swim or rock climb, which I loved. Grandma would take me shopping and Grandpa would oblige. He usually ended up spoiling me though, as he loved to spoil all he loved. We would watch movies. Private Eyes and Trouble with a Curve were some of his favorites. On the days that he worked, my grandma and I would visit him during his lunch hour. He had so many friends there that he would introduce me to. He was such a friendly guy. Some might say too friendly at times. And he liked to make people laugh. I remember how, as we pulled up to his street, he would take off his seatbelt, do a double take at me, and say, I'm a rebel. And I take off mine to join him and say, we're both rebels now. If Grandpa taught me anything, it was how to love. He always made sure to hold my hand whenever he could, even placing a hand on me during a movie just to let me know that he was there. He taught me quality time as we drove around, sometimes talking, sometimes not, and just taking the beautiful moments of Colorado and spending time together. Sometimes on these drives, he would tell me a little about his childhood, or one story I remember him telling me was about how he drove a race car once on the speedway and thought it was way too fast, and he wanted to stick to the pig crew for the rest of his life. He liked to find fun things to do when my family and I visited him. We used to go to the Alpine Slide or Estes Park and just spend the day there before going home, always grabbing ice cream or froyo and watching movies. As I got older, he would teach me how to drive and encourage me to keep practicing. Now looking back, I'm sure that's where I got some of my own driving rage in traffic. He was always supportive of me no matter what. One of my favorite memories with my grandpa was when my cousin Haley and I went to visit him over Christmas break. We did all the normal stuff of getting treats before watching movies, eating good food. We always had to fit in Bojo's pizza and Mexican for dinner, or for breakfast he would get a Denver bowl, either from 3 Chicks or Egg and I, or we would all go and get Neater's French toast. And for dessert, we'd always get ice cream or froyo. And visiting, and then we would also visit cool areas near Denver. I remember we went to a playhouse that has since closed down. It was like a Christmas cabaret that they were doing, and the only distinct song I remember them singing was Danny Boy, because I didn't understand at the time how that could be a Christmas song. And somehow I can remember that, but I can't remember the name of the playhouse. I can remember that one night Haley got a bunch of Reese's peanut butter cups for her treat. I don't remember what I got. I remember that during that time he was completing chemo and was constantly peeing, and Haley and I would tease him about it. But he would always tease us right back, so it's fine. The rest of that trip came to be known throughout the years between the three of us by a special nickname. You see, we had watched the action masterpiece starring Channing Tatum and Jamie Foxx of White House Down. So, a little bit after that, my grandpa took us tubing in the mountains. We had a really great time, and on the way home, driving through the snow-covered mountains, because it was like December, I was laying down in the back of his truck with Haley and him in the front two seats, because I respect my elders. And but I was laying down in the back of his truck, probably trying to prevent a car sickness or something, when the vehicle started to slide a little bit. Grandpa, having years of experience with cars, was able to prevent us from going off the side of the road and down a cliffside. All of us were a little shook up, but once we had a moment to breathe, we kind of laughed and said something along the lines of, "White truck down, white truck down." Since that trip, whenever one of us would say "white truck down," we'd laugh and instantly remember one of the best trips and times spent with Grandpa. Sometimes he would just randomly text Haley and I and say, "White truck down, I love you." In the last few years after he retired, Grandpa went right back to work. This time he worked as a bus aide for a special needs bus, which I'm sure we've all said before. And boy, did he love it. Everyone's said that before me, but he really did. The only other time I ever saw him light up so much was when he would talk about his kids and grandkids, or baseball. When it came to baseball, there seemed to be only one thing he loved more: his family. Some would argue, but let me share a story to prove my point. I remember going to a Rockies game with my family and Grandpa. My little sister could have been too old, and I'm sure she doesn't even remember this. I know she was at least walking and talking, because as soon as we got to the ballpark, all she wanted to do was play at the playground. Of course, none of the rest of us wanted to go. We all wanted to watch the game. So guess who took her? My grandpa. He ended up missing most of the game to spend time with his granddaughter and make her happy. I don't think he ever regretted it. That's the kind of grandpa he was. He loved so fiercely that he would give up watching a baseball game in person at the Rockies baseball field to spend time with his grandkids. The last time I saw my grandpa was when we went out to California for his sister Bev's funeral. He really loved his siblings so much. I'm so grateful for that time, because he shared stories of growing up with them and what it was like. As we drove around his old stomping grounds, as he would say, he would point out places he worked, bars he had fights in, and even an old drive-in he used to go to. The time was spent with family, or the trip was spent with family, and I know that filled Grandpa's heart with joy. He told me personally how happy he was that his kids were there to support him at his sister's funeral. On his way out to California, the airline had lost his luggage. My Uncle Jason, Aunt Lisa, my dad, and I all did the best we could to help him get through the weekend without his stuff, to buy him new stuff, to arrange housing and a rental car. So at the end of that trip, when I was taking him to the airport, he got really emotional, expressing his gratitude, I believe to my grandma, about how proud he was of his kids. I know that he was so full of love and pride for his kids and his grandkids all the way through the end. Looking back, I wish that I had called more. I miss hearing his voice. Luckily, I saved a few voicemails from him, but it's not the same as hearing him laugh at a dumb joke I tried to make, or the excitement in his voice when I asked if I could visit him. I already miss him for future events and things he's missing, like the birth of my cousin Haley's firstborn, like my own wedding someday, hopefully, and being there to meet my future family. He was supposed to be there for these things, and it doesn't really make sense that he's not here. Sometimes I still forget and don't really understand.
Memory is such a weird thing. Memories can be so cruel, and yet they're all that we have left of those who died. I would give anything to ask Grandpa if he knew something about my car, to ask him about his childhood and his life, to ask him anything at this point. I would give anything just to drive around, hold his hand, take off our seatbelts when we were a block away, and talk about how rebellious we were. I would even give anything to get the random "white truck down, love you, Grandpa" text from him. I miss him so much, and I know all we have are memories now. Memories we share, and memories that are just for us. Memory is bittersweet. It's bitter for the reminder of the fact that he's gone and we'll never see him again, and yet so sweet to cherish the good times and to be grateful for being able to have known him. I'm so grateful for those times. People say he will live on forever in our memories, and that's right. That's right. He was taken far too soon. He will forever be in our hearts and minds, so he's not really gone, is he? I like to hope so. Grandpa, I love you, and thank you. Thank you all for being here. I know he would have been so happy and proud.
Hi everyone, I'm JC, one of his grandfathers. I'll be sharing some of his memories from his family. I'll start with Lisa. Although Dad made sure I learned essentials like changing my oil and tires, my best memories from my dad were time spent with him as an adult. When he came to visit in Hawaii, it was his first vacation in forever, and he told me it was the best time of his life. When I moved back to Colorado, we would have breakfast and lunch dates at Einstein Brothers Bagels, will forever be our spot. Chuck, his son. I can't really say this is my favorite memory because there's way too many great memories with my dad. At the ballpark, at the racetrack, his shop, helping others, vacations, etc. The memory I'd like to share was a unique experience that taught me so much while spending valuable time with Dad. I worked with my dad at a Pacific Brake and Tire for summer when I was around 13 years old. My dad usually worked 10 to 12-hour days, and we would open up the shop around 6 a.m. He taught me how to replace brakes, change tires, adjust alignments, etc. I would clean the shop and make coffee. I vividly remember packing bearings. Back in the day, we had to take the bearings out. We used the packing tool that will fill the bearings and grease would ooze out of the bearings. It was very messy. I also remember cleaning grease off parts in the solid bath with my bare hands and no eye protection. I remember every time the air compressor would kick on, it would terrify me. It would house in a shed behind the back in the shop, and it was ridiculously loud. Over the years of helping him repair cars, I learned so many valuable lessons. Not only did I learn car repair and maintenance, and the fact that I definitely did not want to be a mechanic when I grew up, but most importantly, I learned how to work hard, get my hands dirty, and help others whenever possible. While working that summer, I was told his boss, George, was supposed to pay me. Years later, I found out that my dad paid me each week out of his own paycheck. And we did not have money, a lot of money. I would have done it for free just to be with him. But I realized once again how important I was to him. He was willing to pay me to be with him each day. I still call my dad often when I had a car question always need a refresh course on replacing my brakes. He then makes a smart aleck comment about how I didn't learn anything all those years. Well, Dad, I may forget how to replace brakes, but I will never forget all the lessons I've learned from your example. As a provider, a volunteer, a grandpa, and most importantly, a dad. Who do I call now? From Jason and his son, I have so many great memories of my dad. My dad was definitely a work before pleasure man. Because of that, I often put work before anything else. I believe we both have felt the pressure of providing for a family at a young age. So when I have had memories go through my mind of what is the real purpose of life, I always think back to the time shared as a family. Being the youngest, my dad was definitely tired of my teenage years. But when we traveled on vacation, he was young again. We would get up early on vacation to Utah and head to Fire Basin in search of donuts. Then, depending on the season, either sledding down a hill or down a water slide. Those to me were special times. Instead of work and everyday life, he spent time with us, laughing, smiling, and teaching us you need to have fun. I'm grateful for my dad's example of hard work, to spend quality time with your family, and always keep humor and smiles in your life. Love you, Dad. Your legacy will continue. Chris, his son. When I was young, my dad watched a lot of sports, usually baseball. He would often fall asleep on the couch or in his recliner. One of us would usually cover him with a blanket before we went to bed. I still remember watching him sleep. I always paid attention to his big, strong chest and whether it was moving up and down. I don't know why, but I would get scared if I couldn't see him nervously breathing. He was so strong and invincible when he was awake, but so soft and vulnerable when he was sleeping. Obviously, it was never an issue then, but I will never forget the fear I felt with the thumb of his weekend. Eventually, realized falling asleep on the couch just to watch the last innings of the ball game probably wasn't ideal in my mom's eyes. Or maybe it was an invention of T-Bell. McKenna, his granddaughter. He was the bomb diggity grandpa. He would go out to dinner with her and her dad. Grandpa would slip her in his car to pay for it before Dennis could. And then on Friday nights, they would go to Red Box and get a half-gallon of ice cream and a package of Oreos, and she would sleep over. I'd like to end with what I've learned being his granddaughter. I work hard in everything I do. Serve others and families first. I love you, Grandpa.
I'd like to thank you for the privilege of being here with you today. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your hearts and memories and helping us feel the legacy of Neil Bergstrom. And grateful for the influence that this has had on all of us. I have a few remarks, and it will be brief. But I hope it will be helpful and uplifting to each of us. This morning I was having a conversation with my 10-year-old son. He was looking at the weather on my phone like he seems to do every morning, and just was extremely disappointed about the cloudy day it was going to be today. And it was the worst thing ever to have a cloudy day. And I just could not convince him otherwise. As much as I tried to explain, it's because of the cloudy days that you appreciate the sunny days. And it's because of the rain that we have green hills and mountains and trees. And at the end of the conversation, we had to agree to disagree. He just could not get there. And I realized that it, I guess, takes a little bit of experience and maturity to be aware enough of the world around us to recognize what the cloudy days do for us. And the same could be said for the need for a little spiritual maturity in our lives to recognize what an event like Neil's passing can do for us. It is a miracle that God's love and power are so great that in the things mortality takes away from us, God is able to bring about good. That through our temporary losses, He is able to help us find the true treasures in life and make those treasures even more clear to us. What a gift it is to be sitting here today reflecting on the life of this good man, Neil, who has been influential. Though an emptiness and void is left in his absence, a loving Father and Savior, provide a way for that void and emptiness to be filled. The timing of Neil's passing was certainly no coincidence. All of us had the opportunity to be pondering the loss at the same time and season that we ponder the gifts of Easter. Our emptiness can be filled with the fullness of Christ's atoning sacrifice and his universal resurrection. As Jacob in the Book of Mormon taught, death passes upon all mankind to fulfill the merciful plan of the great Creator. And as a result, there must needs be a resurrection. In this seemingly paradoxical miracle of God's merciful plan, we find that because of Christ and the wisdom of our Heavenly Father, we are able to find joy by passing through sorrow. We can gain strength by acknowledging our weaknesses and discover death is the portal through which we find immortality. I share my testimony with you today that Jesus Christ is our Savior, and that our trust and faith in him is what brings ultimate peace in this life and salvation in the next. We've all been compelled to stop our lives to one degree or another because of Neil's passing. And I encourage all of us to be open to what we are being taught by this experience. I invite you to allow the new perspective on life to shape your thoughts and actions and to draw you more fully to the Savior and to his gospel, of which I'm very grateful for. And I testify that Neil will live again, that we all will live again and see Neil and all of our loved ones. We are living the plan of our Father in heaven, and it does not end with death. I testify to that to you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. We'll have a closing hymn. All singing together. Hymn number 152, God Be With You Till We Meet Again. Monica Bergstrom will give our benediction. And just a reminder, there is a luncheon being provided in the cultural hall afterwards for the family. And the plan is to meet at the Mona Cemetery at 1:30 for the interview.
Sound so sad, Our dear Father in heaven, we come before thee this day, grateful that we have this opportunity to meet together in this building. We are very grateful that we could come together as family and friends to celebrate the life and legacy of Neil Bergstrom. We're so grateful for Neil and all that he taught our family. We're so thankful for the love and sacrifices he made for his family. We are grateful for Neil's life, for his hands that were rough and calloused, and that showed so much love. We're grateful that through that love and that hard work, our children have been taught by his example. I'm grateful, Father, for the temple. We're grateful to have the temple in our lives and to have family. We're so thankful for all those who traveled far distances to be here today to celebrate Neil's life with us. We're so grateful for all those who helped prepare this special day for us. We ask, Father, that the Holy Ghost will be comforting for us at this time. That we will all feel Neil's love, and that we will all remember the lessons that he taught us and the sacrifices he made for us. And we're so thankful for him. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I'd like to invite everyone, please stand.
We have those acting as pallbearers to step out to the foyer for us.